indeed my great honor to introduce a dear friend and colleague, Professor Langa Khumalo. And of course, he is quite a familiar personality to many of you in this room, having served as the former Director of Language Planning and Development. He is a distinguished international linguist. Although his focus is on African languages, primarily isiZulu, he holds a cosmopolitan view of language and language development. And this comes largely from his PhD in linguistics from the University of Oslo in Norway and his MA in linguistics from Cambridge. And over the years, he's made significant contributions globally in the field of digital humanities, which is a fairly new enterprise in this country. So his prominence and inspirational leadership has recently earned him the position of Director of the South African Digital Language Resource, also known as SADILA, which is located at Northwest University. SADILA is a national research infrastructure with a strategic function to stimulate and support research and development in the domains of human language technologies, natural language processing, and digital humanities. So, his growing list of accolades and awards are too extensive to note in this brief introduction. And amongst his numerous credentials, he is the past chair of USAF's Community of Practice for the Teaching and Learning of African Languages, COPAL. He's fellow of the Cambridge Commonwealth Society, a language champion of the Oxford Global Languages Program for Oxford University Press, a member of the Scientific Board for the Center for African Studies, CASAS, and current president of the African Association for Lexicography, AfriLex. More recently, he received a recognition award from the University of Free State for global contribution to multilingualism. He was also elected fellow of the Zimbabwe Academy of Sciences and nominated to the USAF Steering Committee for National Integrated Cyber Infrastructure System Initiatives. That's a big one, eh, Langa? So today, Langa will share his insights on the theme, Digital Language Death, African Languages in Higher Education in the Context of 4IR. And you will agree this is a subject that is not only timely, but also critical for our ongoing conversations about the future of education in a rapidly digitizing world. So, Langa, if we could give you 45 minutes to deliver your sermon to us, after which, if you could allow some time for discussion, Q&A. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Professor Langa Khumalo.
Today I will try and share more complexities in the context of the fourth industrial revolution. I'm very happy to be here and to also see familiar faces and to also see a good friend in the audience. I have many friends, so if I leave you out, I know you are the kind of people that are not jealous. So it's okay. But I see comrades and friends. Tawa, I see you, good friend and an amazing David. It's good to be home. It feels like home. I speak on a couple of issues on language, because language is what the British would call my forte. But on language and education, because we don't speak in isolation, we speak to generate knowledge, we speak to share that knowledge, we speak in order to innovate and advance as we run into it. So language is that key. And then of course the context of 4IR brings a new threat, the digital language death. And then the solution is to try and catch up, and I hope that I will share experiences within the context of the South African Center for Digital Language Resources, where I am, and hope that we have prepared for the future now. So when it comes to language, I have spoken a lot about how I have transitioned from a linguistic theorist trained in most of the major linguistic theories, the Chomskyan generative grammars and their various incarnations, the lexical functional grammars, the constraint-based grammars, etc., etc. I have transitioned beyond that because the grammars are just frameworks. But language is much more than that. And language infrastructure is something that is vitally important to add to the complexity of each language as it interfaces with our human experiences. And the biggest human experience now is the disruptive 4IR that we are presented with. So language is key in that amongst all this disruption, amongst all this chaos, it is that which humanizes us. And I hazard this point because there are so many frontiers that want to distill the role of language and retain it as just a tool of communication. And that has its own risks, especially for the languages of the sub-Saharan Africa, who were ostracized, stripped of their function, of major function, that of training in human development, of citizenship training as we knew it in our world. And there is an imperative to re-establish the function, the role of those languages so that they can connect to the speaker, so that these speakers can then actively interface with knowledge centers as we know them and contribute to this amazing, growing global knowledge economy that we subsist in. So language organizes and expresses our thoughts, and the key function is that it spurs our innovation. And if we actually are mindful of that, then the conversation that comes after this makes more sense. It is central to all forms of learning. It is an enabler in knowledge generation. It enables sharing that knowledge. The capacity to share knowledge, as I do now, is because it is enabled through language. So it is that vitally important. In education, there was a major disruption that happened in the African continent, and of course other societies that I am not going to talk to. Because we were speaking species, we obviously had systems of training, and these systems of training used language as a central tool or as a central vehicle through which we carried and conveyed the knowledge, which is now called indigenous knowledge system, as if we just packed and put it in a bunker somewhere for accessibility many years later, and yet these people were actually living and experiencing. So we still have our modern experiences of what happened during colonialism, of what happened when the cultures clashed. And these cultures clashed in a very, very violent way. And the biggest violence was that literally African tongues were cut off. Like literally, okay, metaphorically, I mean. But I'm using language. So in language you can express anything. That's the power of language. So that you can see the violence in it. So I want to argue, as Philip said and others have argued, that after the Second World War, language was weaponized to suppress other ways of knowing. I am not going to indulge you with the pronouncement by Winston Churchill in 1946. I think I have quoted that extensively in many of my talks. But the system that was enunciated in Africa, in this cultural conflict, had the effect of impinging on, of deriding and effectively excluding African languages in the training centers that were ushered in as schools. Because of the proscription of African languages in these knowledge centers, it meant that African languages did not have the efficacy and capacity to interface with knowledge with all its complexity, which now has the effect of people thinking that you can't use language X in mathematics, you can't use language X in physics, in chemistry, in biology, etc., as if there are languages that are naturally designed to teach mathematics, to teach science. The effect of this proscription was the de-intellectualization of African languages. That African languages did not evolve naturally in this natural interface with knowledge and knowledge system. Therefore, they lacked the capacity, the terminology, and other things that I'm going to talk about. So the effect of de-intellectualizing African languages was as a result of monolingualism that was advanced through colonialism. English therefore became an enabler and a sustainer of the colonial enterprise. Its hegemonic position had a telling effect on other languages, most of which, and the ones that bore the worst brunt, were African languages, resulting in what Ngugi has called the decolonization of the mind and what Spivak calls cognitive damage. And of course, satisfy what in that quotation in 46, Churchill called the future empires, which are the empires of the mind. Transitioning from the land empire to the empires of the mind. And of course, its third iteration, the colonial empire. And I couldn't find a better person to articulate this, that colonialism is monolingualism. And actually, it's a perfect statement there. The English hegemony is driven by nothing other than the entire colonial enterprise. That continues to morph. And if we're not tracking its morphology and fitting into the architecture of this morphology, we are actually going to suffer what we suffered at that violent contact between the cultures, the two cultures. So the hegemony of English is now very, very complex in that in order for you to actually explicate the extent to which it has affected other languages, you have to ironically do that in the English language to make sense. That's the extent to which the English domination is. And of course I've made allusions to the fact that the de-intellectualization has the capacity, this role, and effectively the status of African languages in all training programs across our human activities. And then the effect is that you get the same people developing and advancing the global English and its technological advancement, saying to us, African languages are under-resourced, African languages are low-resource languages, African languages are this, that, and the other. I have a paper with a colleague of mine, Maria Kidd, on the problematization of these terms when you're looking at language resources in African languages. Because some of them are so prejudicial that it's as if the African languages in and of themselves don't carry the capacity to be anything better than what they are: under-resourced, low-resourced, less resourced, etc. There are all papers on the characterization of these languages. But of course, those resources in terms of grammars, because who would describe a language that has no functional space? They don't have grammars. In fact, most of our grammars, until very recently, were by the German linguist Meinhof, Clement Dog, and they are still remaining as the most instructive grammars of African languages. And of course, we have a lot of hymn books. A lot of hymn books. And the Bible is actually translated in its full complexity. There is no verse that's left out that, no, we didn't have a term in necessarily for this one. Actually, they have a term for everything. So we don't have linguistic descriptions. And of course, that has an effect, because if you're going to develop a grammar checker, for instance, you need the structure of the language in order for you to automate that grammar. We don't have corpora. I spoke about corpus resources yesterday. And of course, we don't have many machine-readable data sets that can be used to develop machine learning systems. And of course, HLT's, the development of human language technologies, are limited because of this paucity of these other resources. But most importantly, we don't have experts. And I'm not talking to you in this room. I mean, I was, one of the critiques of my paper was that, can you give us an indication on how many people are working on isiNdebele as linguists in South Africa? I couldn't count up to 10. I couldn't count up to 10. And English has a whole British Commission working on English in every country. So comparatively, we are really, in many ways, poorly resourced, and we don't have experts. And most of our experts, and again, I'm sorry to be attacking my colleagues, most of the linguists that we have are people that aspired to do law, did not have enough credits, ended up doing language. So they didn't want to do it in the first place. All of these are challenges that face the development of African languages. And of course, African languages are not bankable. They can't attract any funding. If all the funding frameworks that I have been involved in, they involve a European partner in order for us to access a European grant, like the grant that we have. It's a big grant, European Union funded. But I had to have partners at the University of Sweden, because in and of themselves, they can't attract any funding. So a lot of challenges in terms of attracting resources that are necessary as precursors to the development of these languages. A good friend, Konai, introduced in the context of these digital advances and technological advances, an interesting term called digital language death. which means that as we transition, and as we should, into this fourth revolution, and there were iterations of the first, the second, and third, and there were people that were called out. In fact, there are communities that did not actually embrace the third revolution, and now they're seized with the fourth industrial revolution. We can only play catch up. But in the process of catching up, and in the context of language and language development, most languages are going to die a digital death. And he characterizes digital language death as the potential to decline or disappear in the digital sphere. And some of them are actually going to disappear, not because they don't have data, as we had our keynote yesterday. There are languages that already have digitized in India. But if you don't have digital citizens that actively use these languages, they are going to die a digital death. And again, because every leading technology is in English or any of the advancing European languages in the EU. So we need to actually play a lot of catch up, because 4IR is the latest and present threat to African languages. The context of 4IR, therefore, which is characterized by rapid technological advances, has English as dominating this digital world. It threatens the presence of African languages in this space, and the causes of that, I've said them: loss of function performed digitally. You know, I ask my friends all the time, why are you writing to me in English in a WhatsApp? Why? Why? I deal with English in an official email at work, and now in my private space, you're writing to me in English. Hey. So, and this is weird. We are, even small text, small text, we're not digitizing our languages in those small conversations. Why? Because we are not digital citizens, or at least our languages are failing to make inroads into these digital spaces. And of course, loss of prestige, with the adage, if not in the work, it does not exist. And literally, if things are not there, if actually I Google something, we asked the students, do you know that this exists? They check it after a minute. No, it doesn't. Why? Can't find it. And this is actually, these are one of the risks that our keynote speaker was saying yesterday. We will need to do more in order to create knowledge spaces that are instructive and bring them back as part of our cognitive development. Because if you are going to be evidence-based and look for what you think exists in an external platform such as these digital platforms, then we are literally bequeathing our humanity to these systems. And I think he put it so well yesterday. I don't want to drag it into my maybe in question and answer. Really, we have a real and present danger of interacting with that which is an imitation of who we are as humans, and think that I know him very well. Where do you know him from? He has an Instagram page. She has a Facebook page. Really? And of course, the last cause of death, according to Conrad, is the inability to raise digital natives. People who can actively create data sets. And these are multimodal data sets that are necessary for the training of these systems, tools, and models. And we need to actually advance in African language. I did an SMS experiment some 10 years ago, asking students and their mothers what they communicate and how what language they communicate in and how they communicate. And the best case scenario that was close to using an African language was when a student uses isiZulu, maybe one word, and maybe 2 words in Afrikaans, and the rest of the sentence in English. And when I posed the question why these choices, it saves me money. English is more direct. I don't have to skate around. If I write in English, I don't have to say because hey, I saw you in the morning. But if I have to use it, I have to start with Sawbona. So I just say, when are you picking me up? It's English, I don't have to be courteous. It can just be direct, it serves me 8. And at that time, when we did the experiment, you used to get charged for sending an SMS. So again, it was costly to actually use this. It's too costly. So we are not developing digital text with the citizens that are in this digital platform, because these citizens are choosing a different language. So the challenge is there. It continues because of the nature of the infrastructure. For IR, very quickly, I like Baso's architecture of what the 4IR looks like. We have AI, we have big data, we have the Internet of Things. And all this has not been unpacked in such a way that our students understand what this platform means. But your lack of knowledge or understanding of this does not mean that this technology is not evolving. This technology is evolving very, very fast, and I'm going to give you some of the examples of what we're doing in cellular. We started with basic machine learning systems that needed to be trained on a lot of rule-based technologies. But now, AI is actually learning these rules so fast that I don't need to put together 10 linguists to actually agree on whether or not this sentence is sound, whether it is grammatically okay but semantically wrong. No. It's learning faster than humans can train these data sets. So the technology is moving so fast that it is so difficult for us to catch up. But we can actually use its speed to hasten the development of some of the resources that we require for us to continue in this 4IR space. The chatbots require neural networks, and neural networks are looking for data that exists. If the data is not existing, it becomes poor. I've done that a couple of times, trying to get a sense of an assessment tool for isiZulu. We do have a technology that is doing well. Shack-I, if you can Google it. It's improving every day. It improves, and that's the good thing about AI. It gets better as you continue to train your data on it. But the paucity of findable and reusable data in African languages is again the biggest stumbling block. We are not generating sufficient data sets for us to develop anything that is intelligent. So again, the digital divide is markedly growing, or at least it remains as big, because AI is advancing, and the LLMs really require huge amounts of data for them to even begin to give you any intelligent responses. And I wonder really what the future world of work is going to look like if we are failing to really embrace and really do what we need to do in order to at least present the basic infrastructure that we can use to develop these languages in the context of 4IR. So the effect of this has been, as I've said, de-intellectualization. But how do we re-intellectualize? How do we provide the necessary infrastructure for these languages so that they can actually subsist in the context of 4IR? And of course, it involves firstly debunking the myth that African languages are inherently shallow and inadequate. They are not inherently shallow. They lack certain gaps, certain technology gaps, certain technological gaps, but they're not inherently shallow. And there are languages that you can use as test cases. I mean, Hebrew, for instance, Afrikaans, closer home, Bahasa. You know, you can re-intellectualize any language at any time. You need resources and commitment and expertise to do that. So we need to ensure that African languages have resources that can actually enable them to be used in all spheres of life. Not confined in prayers and imsan, but in all spheres of life. You know, from the mundane, religious, and to the most complex in the classroom. We need them to be developed to that full capacity. And this requires radical transformation for their capacity to enroll. This required carrying the heavy end in developing the infrastructure that is required in the context of so what does SADILA come in to do? SADILA is a research infrastructure set up in 2026 in the context of what is now known as the South African Research Infrastructure Roadmap, SADILA. It was one of the 13 research infrastructures that were launched in 2016, and it is the only one that focuses on humanities, and with a very, very sharp focus on language and language resourcing in the digital space. It has three main programs: digital humanities, with a sharp focus on the computational uptake and computational social science uptake, trying to give capacity to humanists in the use of computational resources and some methodologies. And then the digitization program, which in its broad sense is developing corpora and multimodal corpora that are necessary in training and developing HLTs, speech-to-text technologies, machine learning systems, and now we are advancing towards AI systems. And of course, the higher education support. We need certain programs to be looking at what is happening in higher education and how we can support higher education. Digitization entails developing digital text, speech, and multimodal resources that are related to all the official languages. And our biggest one is sign language, which is terribly. If you thought Isignebelo was under-resourced, sign language is poorly resourced. And yesterday I had you speak about sign language, and to have a conversation, because we are actually actively supporting resource development in this space, and we have funding for that. I don't have much money to pass aloud, but yeah, we can pass aloud money. We will be having our open call soon for small projects that have use case outputs and or proof of concept outputs in technology development for African languages. So I'm putting it out there. We can fund that. We actively do fund that. And of course, we focus on natural language processing, software tools, and of course, broadly research development. But within our Escalator program, which is our flagship program, we are actively trying to cultivate a community of practice that can understand and use DH methods that can really have a strong uptake in computational and social science initiatives. And we need to break the silos, especially in the humanities space, and partner people with engineers that use very novel technologies to actually answer some of the very long-standing questions within the humanities. And we are happy to present that. So if you have a thing, you can check in detail what our Escalator program entails. But within our Escalator program, we have various tracks. So you have the Explorer, the Embarker, the Enhancer, and this is according to how, what competencies we have going into any of those various tracks. And the Empower tracks actually focuses on humanist women humanists that actually want to have computational training. And then the Engager track is a track that we developed in partnership with SoTL, Wikipedia South Africa, and Pan South African Language Board, so that we can actually actively develop data sets and present them in the wikis or as wikis, so that we can increase the footprint of our official languages in the cyber infrastructure. So the Engager track is part DH, but mainly resource development, and it raises DH and social science awareness and bridges the gaps between the two quintessentially humanist and quintessentially engineering approaches, and promotes digital literacy and computational uptake. What we have done in this tripartite partnership is to really cultivate a community that we train on how to create digital resources, how to edit them, how to put them on the free encyclopedia. And our real theme in driving this initiative is to preserve our languages, or official languages, and to open and free and accessible knowledge that these languages inherently carry. So it can be anything. It can be isiNdebele art, or it can be a paper that is published in isiNdebele for delivery in a lecture. So the range of things can vary that much. And of course, we have PANSA as a partner to look at the appropriateness of the complexity of terms that are introduced and shared and standardized or authenticate those terms, and of course, share with their blessing. So we started with isiNdebele a year ago, and this is now the footprint of the language in the wikis. And when we started, isiNdebele did not even have a single hit on Wikipedia. So this, to us, is a very practical way of not, and we're not doing it in SoTL. We are going to the community, the speakers themselves. And these speakers can be artists, can be students, can be lecturers, professors. And we say, you have been teaching subject X in English. Can you have your material in isiNdebele? Are you happy to have this material presented in isiNdebele? We do have PANSAP here. Do you want PANSAP to check your terminology, its appropriateness, and so on? Edit it. Are you now happy for this to be on Wiki? And today, these are the articles. The traffic is the one that really, and the references, everything must be referenced, okay? Because of course, the architecture of the encyclopedia itself, you know. But we have Wikipedia as our partner that is actually also training on the structure of the articles that are supposed to be up there. And in this partnership, we are very happy to say Wikipedia has actually agreed to launch isiNdebele with this kind of activity into the wikis as part of the 319 languages that are in Wikipedia. And you might say that that's a lot of languages. That's nothing compared to the 7,000 languages plus that are spoken out there. So this presence is really important for us, and this activity is that we're going to be spreading it across the 9 other official languages, because English has an amazing presence, as you know. Afrikaans has a very good presence, and over 1 million editors. See, this language only has 318. Afrikaans has active editors. 1 million, which is amazing, and that's the commitment of these linguists, real linguists, who wanted to do something about their languages, and they're following through. Not this fly-by-nights. I wanted to be a lawyer, but ended up in language. type of linguist. I'm sorry to hazard that. And you see it when you say, here is the project money, here is the project conception, can you follow through in this way? Yeah. They're very quick to give up. Because the passion is not there. They never wanted it. I'm sorry, but I move on. Okay, so in a recent conversation, I don't know whether you know anything about Langa, I can talk about it more in question and answer. It's an AI company that is focused on developing resources for the 9 official languages, that is our African languages. And when she was asked on this niggling question on the paucity of data to develop clever tools for these languages, she had this to say. The big issue is, of course, the paucity of data sets in these languages, but not as big as we think. We just have gotten to the point where we can deal with it yet. We just have not gotten to the point where we can deal with it yet. Machine learning in the language space is an extremely inefficient process, and there is a lot of room for machines to be smarter and to learn from less. And that's what part was our conversation yesterday, that while we can continue to decry the fact that we are not developing big data and large resource space for these African languages, the systems themselves are getting smarter to learn from less, which means, again, there is an opportunity from AI for us to make a lot of progress in the development of these languages for use, not now, in the future, but now, most importantly, in higher education, because when they are used in higher education, they are increasing their complexity. They are increasing their ability to grapple with complex knowledge domains, and therefore they improve their usability. So it is clear from this that the next generation of AI could be efficient enough to learn from less data, and we can have actually swift development of these low resource African languages and have smart systems learning from less data sets, and in that hasten the advances. And again, I want to invite a good friend Khumalo when he talks about digital asset, because I think that that's our target now. We need for these languages to increasingly acquire digital function so that they can actually be actively used in the digital space. Language resources are, of course, very key in doing that, because they are a key enabler, and we need to improve these. And we need to have more passionate experts in these languages. I've said to my colleagues in other forums that you are not going to hear anyone from the English-speaking world saying, "Oh, guys, we are sorry, we have taken so much advantage of you. Now you can use your language." No one is going to do that. No English native speaker is going to come and say, yeah, we want to give you the advantage back. Use your language. You've got to take it back. If you are lazy, you are going to die. No, not you, your language. Thank you.
You know, I've always critiqued linguists, and I'm an applied linguist, particularly African linguists, linguists in African languages, who craft their scholarship on language policy critique and advocacy of African languages, and that's where it ends. Do a literature search and you'll find the bulk of literature very narrowly focused on critique and advocacy without what we've experienced today. And what we've experienced today is a demonstration of how you move beyond critique and how you put in place simple systems using appropriate technologies, which are now accessible to all of us. So I'll open now for the next 10 minutes discussion, but I'd like to hear particularly from you, how will you respond to Langa's provocation that we need to halt digital language death? So with your new insights derived from his talk, what will you do on Monday morning in whatever domain you work in? Yes, sorry, I don't know your names. I'll be pointing at you. Feel free to introduce yourself. Is there a roving mic?
Yes.
You know, I'm so inspired by what you shared, and it's very exciting to see what can happen if people just put an effort into it, right? So there needs to be human will. And Prof. Langa was talking about how African languages are often seen as shallow, but I think we need to actually realize that they are superior in many ways in the way they see people as a collective, Ubuntu, as they have better manners than in English. And so when you said what to do on Monday morning, I have a challenge that is probably the one thing that Prof. Langa shouldn't have to do. But me as a white person, and my Indian colleagues in the room, and my non-African speaking colleagues, I'd like to give us all the challenge to integrate Zulu into the things we say. And it's so interesting as a white person, I do that all the time, and people think they giggle and it makes them feel joyful. But how often are we denying people the dignity that they really deserve with their language and develop that will amongst all of us, unless we are using a little bit of it? I mean, it's hard, because Zulu is hard for me. But when I just say, I see, people get so happy because you're honoring who they are at the core. So I think in order for us to get to the digital revolution to happen equitably, we have to create human will. And that does require social justice. That requires emotional, social, and I'd even say spiritual will. So the last thing I just wanted to say is that if we can commit ourselves to do this, and I'm talking to all my white and Indian friends in the room, if we can commit to do this, you will see that not only are you helping heal people, but you're helping keep languages alive. And what's there one more thing I wanted to say?
All right, I think we'll pass to the next person.
Thank you.
Behind you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wow, Prof, this is really provoking, thought-provoking. I'm from agriculture. And part of my PhD was to write agricultural articles for Langa, because there was nothing in isiZulu, when it comes to agricultural discipline, and it was so difficult. It was really tough. But language is power. At some point, it was very difficult for me to begin a chapter when I was finishing my PhD. But I would sit down and write it in isiZulu, then something will just kick in. So it's true, language is power. Otherwise, I don't think I will finish my PhD. So it really helped me. I'll start the chapter, with my vernacular isiZulu, but then English will just come and it will continue. And yeah.
That's wonderful, wonderful affirmation.
Yeah.
And more of us should be doing that and encouraging that as supervisors. Bandro?
Yeah, thanks, Prof. I would say every time I listen to you, I shiver inside because, yeah, I do, because it's so unfortunate for our generation that we were born into a space where we were brainwashed right from birth about our language. Because even back home, if you do not speak fluent English, you are an illiterate by default. You are an illiterate. And it gets to the stage where it's so funny that our ladies even say they prefer the guys speaking quick English. They feel attracted to the quick English guys than me speaking long English. I am telling you this. And Prof, I also want to challenge you that going forward, if you want to speak, why don't you speak in your language, and there must be a device to translate to English, right? Because what we are doing here, we are also going to upload these videos online. This is part of the contents that we are also creating. How can we change that such that we bring our language to the foreground and put English as the background? We can always do, just like we always do the, subtitle for our language. Why don't we subtitle English and speak the language? So thank you very much, Prof. I'm shivering now.
Okay, so
Prof. Thank you, Prof. Langa, for the inspiring lecture. But all along, I was thinking about the topic which talks to the death of language, the digital language death. And it makes me think about all the other languages that have actually died, like the language in the built environment, for instance. Our architectural language in the past, the Zulu homestead, would speak to the people. It would tell you, and not that it has stopped speaking, but people have stopped understanding the language even within the homestead. And even in other African cultures, I'm Nigerian by birth, there are languages like tribal marks, right? And they would speak, they would speak immediately to say this person is this and that is that, and even the position within the clan or the culture. But that language still speaks, but we don't understand it. And so we disrespect the language, we disrespect the owners of the language, and even the whole cultural and indigenous knowledge system that goes along. So I think for me, the lecture you've given here is just confirming that our built environment, even though it still speaks, especially in the traditional cultures, we don't understand it. The ecosystem, the environmental system, it still speaks. It still says you are taking too much land, you need more vegetation. It's crying, the birds are going away. We see birds inside buildings because we don't have trees, And this kind of, the built environment is still speaking, but we don't understand it. The clouds, the heat, the temperature is still speaking, but we don't understand it. Likewise, if we don't pay attention to this death of languages, the language will still speak, but we won't understand it. That's the point.
Yes, Prof. Langa, thank you very much. I think I'm more at ease today after listening to your presentation. You've answered a lot of my questions, because really my question was, where are the linguists converging to sort of solve these problems? And also taking from what Prof. Dhunpath said, that a lot of our time is spent as linguistic scholars with the preoccupation at the ideological level, the concepts, social justice and so on, and not enough on the actual technical work. So for me, what I have here are the different platforms that you've provided, which is really what I was crying about. And I think, as I conclude, to agree with you, Prof, there is no one from any other language that's coming to do anything for us. So that's why you see me, every day I talk, you will hear me say, Chifenda, because that's my language, So I'm on all these different platforms you've spoken about, the Lilaba, Shaka, AI, Sadila. So I'm looking at all of those things and how they, I can contribute to creating my language. So I want to thank you.
And it would be great if you shared those resources with colleagues. Nina?
Yeah, so I want to just share a study that I supervise at PhD level. So the student comes from an absolute monarchy, a country that's ruled by an absolute monarch. And the absolute monarch decided that the language of the country will be the language of teaching and learning. What came across in the study was the subversion and the resistance and the complicity of the teaching fraternity to do the opposite. So they just ignored the new policy and the directives. So I think what really came out in the study is that if you have a policy, but you don't monitor it, that you don't make sure that it is effectively put into practice, then the subversion takes place all around. And because it's a landlocked country, the teachers decided that the only way for their students to succeed in life is if they can leave the country, and in order to do that, they need English. So I think we haven't paid enough attention to how political power and resistance complicate and perhaps subvert this wonderful idea that we have to acknowledge all languages.
Thank you, Dana. And that's a reminder to us in this country that it happens to us all the time, particularly in the lower grades. Okay, final, Khumalo, you get the final word, sir.
Oh, not the mic. I had the mic.
No, so sorry. We're going to have to pass on you.
Okay.
The last word goes to Khumalo. We have to now move on to the next talk. So sorry, man. But we have tea to discuss the mic here. Khumalo. Although he doesn't need a mic, eh?
Thank you very much, Prof. Ambulance, I think everyone is aware that the office of the LPDO is blessed to have been led by you. And the foundations that you laid, we are still going strong, and we are happy that you are still leading in this field. Just two things that I think are important for us, responding to the chair's question. I think we need to have a strategy of coordinating all data sets that are available in all 26 universities and support your work, because without those data sets, your work won't be possible. And then that's one. And then two, I think the misinformation that multilingualism will affect people who are monolingual should be corrected. When we are talking about multilingual pedagogy, we are saying lecturers, monolingual, bilingual, multilingual, need to be able to teach a multilingual class. So the emphasis is not about teachers or lecturers being able to speak all these languages, but it's about them affording students the opportunity to speak in their languages. And therefore, we are promoting, in that sense, epistemological access. So that is what I felt yesterday we should have dealt with strongly, because there is a misperception that lecturers are going to lose their jobs simply because they are not multilingual. No, the focus is on students, not on lecturers. Thank you.
Thank you for those words of wisdom.
I think what you said about resources and resource sharing, there actually is a lot of resources that are sitting in most of our universities. And it's something that we have created, I should actually share that slide, what is called Learning Links. Learning Links is a platform that seeks to know what is sitting in all the 26 universities as data set. It can be a corpus, it can be a term list, it can be a dictionary. We want to access those resources, aggregate them, and put them in this learning links. And with that, of course, we are going to be developing systems, but all our systems are systems for systems. They are open access. And if there's limitations to the data, because we took it from a source that says, no, this is the copyright, we will indicate that. But we are actually aggregating the data as we speak now. And with the system is already up. We launched it at TUT on last week. So it's already up. So yeah, I wanted to hasten that point. But to thank my friend and colleague for chairing this one. Thank you.